link building or content? Go to fatjoe.com. On-demand marketing services for agencies and teams. Fat Joe.
Hello, thank you. I'm Kiran Webster and I'm a behavioural strategist at Reflect Digital. And I'm going to be talking today about why empathy is such an important player in your marketing strategy. So before I properly begin, a little bit of what to expect from this talk. I'm a behavioural scientist working in a digital marketing agency. So I'll be speaking from the marketing perspective, obviously, but I'll also be sharing a little bit of the science behind why empathy is so important. So the first thing that I want to say is you may have done a brilliant job with your SEO. You may be ranking really well in your search engine results pages, but that alone is not enough. And the reason for that is when you have only optimized your content for search engines, then it might not resonate with the user or the audience. So you might find that you get the click, but not the conversion, okay? Or you might not be getting the conversion rate that you deserve or should be getting. And that might be because the content's irrelevant, or maybe the content is relevant, but there's something else going on. Maybe the content is a bit too long, boring, confusing. Maybe there's something on the page that's really frustrating. And actually, like Ashley and Sunny were saying, sometimes they found in some of their case studies, they got the SEO rankings, but they didn't quite get the conversions. And this is where empathetic marketing comes in. And by the end of this talk, you will understand why empathetic marketing is so important. So let's talk about what it is. So I want to actually talk about traditional marketing to begin with. So traditional marketing starts from the perspective of the brand or the business. And you go out to the world and you try to sell your product or your service and you're trying to convince them why it's so amazing and why they need it in their lives. Well, empathetic marketing flips that on its head completely and it starts from the consumer perspective. So you're putting yourself in their shoes. And when you do that, you're understanding more about them. You're understanding what their needs are, what their wants are, what their motivations are, what actually demotivates them as well. So it's really customer-centric. And I would argue that a strategy without empathy isn't actually a strategy at all. Okay? Because if you don't have empathy in your marketing strategy, let's say you get the clicks, let's say you get the conversion, the customer purchases, and that's it. Whereas if you have taken the time to understand your audiences and you're empathizing with them and you know as much as you can about them, then you've taken the time to build a relationship with them. You've engaged them in your content. They want to know more about your business, your brand, your products, and you've built up trust as well. So when they make the purchase, they're likely to still hang around. They're going to want to engage with your brand further, they might repurchase, and they might recommend you to others as well. So some of you might be thinking you already know your audiences quite well. Perhaps you've got a wealth of data, you're really good at analysing that, you're segmenting your audiences, and you understand them pretty well. Well, that's great, but you cannot rely on data alone. And there's two main reasons for that. So firstly, if you do that, you're limiting your audiences. So from your data, you can understand who buys what, when they buy it, where they buy it, and how they buy it. But you can't understand why they buy it. And similarly, you can't understand why people aren't buying your product or service. You might be able to track along the customer journey where people fall off and they don't quite make it through to purchase, but you have no idea why. And the second reason is that data comes from humans. So when we have such great data, we've got all these amazing numbers and metrics and stats, we tend to think of it as objective, we tend to think of it as fact. But actually, that has come from humans doing things. And humans are not objective. We're highly subjective, and we're actually quite irrational. So this is where the science comes in. So the way in which we think or make decisions can be conceptualized as System 1 and System 2 thinking. So if anyone has read Daniel Kahneman's work, Thinking Fast and Slow, you'll be familiar with this. So System 1 is a little bit like Homer Simpson. So we have a way of thinking that is really fast and unconscious and automatic. And that's what Homer Simpson is. He doesn't really do much thinking, or at least not any conscious thinking. If he wants a beer, he'll have a beer no matter what time of day it is. If he doesn't feel like going to work, he won't go to work. So he really acts on his gut instinct, on his emotions. They are his driving force. Whereas system 2 is a little bit like Spock from Star Trek. And for those of you that are too young and don't really remember or haven't got a clue what Spock or Star Trek is, then just think of this guy as some sort of AI being. So he makes really conscious, effortful, deliberate decision-making. He will always make a cost versus benefits analysis before doing something. He really weighs up what are the pros and the cons, what's the value of this. So this is thinking about the practicalities, logistics, it's the rational mind. Now you might be thinking, which one are you? Well, we actually always have System 1 and System 2 at play. So Homer and Spock are always there, but it's just a battle of who's going to win in this decision-making context. But Homer is in the driving seat by default, I'm afraid to tell you. So we are not the rational beings that we like to think we are, and we are heavily driven by our emotions or our gut instinct. And this is really important for marketers to understand because which system we decide to speak to or appeal to in our marketing really depends on the context and the audience. So take, for example, booking a holiday. If you were marketing holidays, who would you speak to? Would you speak to Spock and talk about the logistics, perhaps how long it takes to get from the airport to the hotel, what he's going to get for his money? Or would you want to speak to Homer and maybe speak about the emotional things, build that picture in his mind of him lying on a sun lounger next to the pool, drinking as many Duff beers as he likes? So I would argue it might be Homer, but let's see. So, thinking about emotions in decision-making, I want to introduce to you a real-life case study of a man called Elliot. So he was an intelligent, successful businessman, and unfortunately, he grew a tumour on his brain, and it was situated on and around the amygdala. And the amygdala is the part of the brain that is responsible for our emotions. So he needed surgery to remove the tumour. And the neurosurgeons that were doing the operation knew that this would affect his emotions. And they expected that he could be entirely void of emotions. And that's exactly what happened. So after the operation, he was absolutely fine in himself otherwise, but he had no emotions whatsoever. What they weren't expecting was that it would affect his decision-making. So when they realized this, they ran a few tests, and Dr. Damasio, his doctor, asked him to pick out a colour of pen from a few choices of different colours to fill out his medical forms. Elliot took minutes, not seconds, minutes, deciding which pen to use. Then Dr. Damasio asked him to book his next appointment with him, and he took over half an hour to do that. And then finally, Dr. Damasio said, I want to take you out to lunch, but you decide where we're going. And Elliot took hours to make that decision. I mean, I cannot make a decision at the best of times, but I'm pretty sure I could decide where to go for lunch within about 10 minutes. And this is really important because it shows for the first time, as Dr. Damasio concluded, that we're not thinking machines that feel, we're actually feeling machines that think. So we will always feel first. This is really important for marketers to get their heads around because it shows that we need to go beyond just rational, logic-based marketing. Don't just tell people the things they need to know. Don't just speak to Spock. You need to be thinking about emotions too. So I want to talk for a moment about trust. A huge, huge study that was conducted over 8 countries and with over 25,000 respondents found that over 80% said that they must be able to trust the brand to do what is right in order to even consider making a purchase. And they also found that 67% said that they might try a product because of its reputation, but actually will stop buying it if they can't trust the company behind it. So how does this relate to empathy? Well, in order to gain trust, you have to be genuine in your marketing. You have to be authentic. And how can you be authentic if you have no idea about your audience and you can't empathize with them? So to illustrate this point a bit further, I want to share with you the words of President Roosevelt. So he apparently once said, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." Now think for a moment about a time where you have gone to make a big purchase and it's involved having to go in-store, speak to a salesperson. So it could be a car, a bed, a TV, whatever it is. And just think for a moment how you have felt before you've gone in. You might have a little script running through your head of what kind of tactics you're going to use with the salesperson, or you might even speak to, say, your partner and say, okay, we're going to say our budget's this, but really we know our budget's this. And the reason that you are doing that is because you know that you're about to be sold to. In your head, that salesperson doesn't care about you and your needs. All they care about is the commission they're about to make. And a little personal anecdote on that line of mine is when I went to buy a car once, I had all my needs, my requirements, my budget, whether I wanted petrol, diesel, etc. But a big thing for us that we were really struggling with was we needed a car that was big enough to fit 2 children's car seats in it, a pram in the boot, and also have space for whatever else we needed as well. And so we went to the forecourt like you do, walked in and was greeted by a salesperson. He came over very friendly, very keen, enthusiastic, told him everything we needed. And when we said about the children's car seats, it's kind of like the light switched off. And he, tried to show us cars that were well out of our budget. And it just wasn't really helpful. Anyway, we went to a second car garage. Same thing happened. But this time, when we said about our needs for the car seats and the pram, the salesman said, "What a pain. I understand. I tell you what, have you got your car seats with you today? Go and get them, bring them in, and we will try them out in every single car in the forecourt if that is what you need." That salesman knew what I needed. He had empathy. He didn't have to be a parent to empathize with me, but he showed that he cared. And obviously, he got the sale. And this is even more important for digital marketers to be thinking about, because digital is everywhere. We can reach anyone, anytime, anywhere. If you're not empathetic, then your marketing is just going to be pushy. It's going to be bothersome. It's going to be annoying. If you have empathized with your audiences and you understand what they need, what their problems are, what their pain points are, then actually you're going to be really helpful no matter how many times you pop up. So this is our job. Our job is to make the audience's lives easier. So I want to conduct a little bit of a kind of thought experiment now. So I want you to imagine that you are the marketing manager for a big chain of coffee shops. And you understand how important empathy is in your marketing. So you're going to try to be a bit more empathetic. And the way in which you're going to do that is by engaging in a bit of a thought exercise. You're going to imagine the customer journey. You're going to imagine what it's like to be the customer. So take a few seconds to imagine that journey from seeing the coffee shop across the road, walking across the road, entering, ordering your favorite drink or food, sitting down, enjoying it, and leaving again. So just take 2 to 3 seconds to imagine that. Now, I can bet you weren't very customer-centric at all. You were very ego-centric. So you might have thought of your favorite coffee shop. Mine was Starbucks. And you might have thought of ordering your favorite panini or your favorite coffee. Mine's a coconut flat white if anyone would like to buy me one. And the reason for that is you are a consumer. So when you try to think about the consumer perspective, your consumer identity is activated because it's so much easier to access our own thoughts and experiences than try to imagine what it's like for somebody else. And there are tons of studies that show exactly this. As marketers, we're really bad at empathy, even when we try to be empathetic. So this set of studies in particular found that the more empathetic we tried to be, or marketing managers tried to be, the worse they were at predicting the consumer perspective. And that's because the consumer identity gets in the way. And by the way, those results didn't change regardless of seniority or years of experience. So you're probably a little bit confused now because I've told you how important empathetic marketing is, and then I've kind of said it doesn't really work. So should we be empathetic at all? Well, yes. Those are examples of how not to do it. One way in which we can try to be empathetic is using personas. Now, I don't mean personas that look like this. It's very hard to be empathetic with this person. Think about if we were advertising those holidays, what would you do with this? This is what you would get if you just analysed your data alone to try to understand your audiences. So instead, you need to be lifting up the bonnet. You need to be understanding what's going on beneath the bonnet. You need to be figuring out what is driving people. And to use another analogy, humans are like icebergs. So with an iceberg, you only see 10% of its mass above the surface of the water. 90% is below the water. And that's the same when it comes to our thought processes and our decision making. We can't really see what's happening. So you need to be diving under the water to figure out what is happening and what is driving that decision making. So you need to be building on the data. Do use your data, but build on it. You need to understand customer motivations, and you need to understand their problems so you can tell them how you can solve them and make their lives easier. So as a reminder, empathetic marketing is not this. It's not looking at your data, and it's not imagining the audience's perspective. Instead, you might want to use techniques such as social listening, interviewing customer-facing teams, because they are the ones that speak to customers day in, day out. They know the customers. Interview customers themselves. Use mixed methods approaches, review the wider context, so zoom out as well as zooming in, use focus groups, analyze your click-to-chat data, and much, much more. And when you do that, you'll go from personas that look like this to personas that look a little bit more like this. Obviously, this is a really simple, basic thing that I've just thought of, but if you are thinking about holiday making, for this type of person, their emotional needs and concerns might actually be about what's the safety for lone travellers in this particular country, particularly female lone travellers. And actually, they might be more moved to make a decision or book a holiday by friends and family recommendations than by TripAdvisor and 5-star Google reviews. So I want to end with a real-life case study from one of our clients, Sunsail and the Moorings. So their holiday pages, the content on there, was set up for customers that were in the purchase stage of the funnel. And so it had everything on there that they needed to know in order to make that booking. So really, it was speaking to Spock. It was telling them the logistics, what you can and can't do, and everything you need so you could click book and job done. But actually, the people that were landing on those pages weren't quite there, and they were a bit further up the funnel. And what they were looking to do was to research. They want to learn about the holiday. They want to be inspired a little bit more. And research has also shown that what people want from holidays is relaxation. They want to know about beaches. They want to know about different experiences that they can have, and not just how long it takes to get to the airport, from the airport to the hotel, for example. So when Sunsail and the Moorings changed their content to understand the audience that were landing on the pages a bit better, and started to talk about things like the beaches of Croatia or the private dining experiences you could have on your yacht, they actually found a massive difference. So 197% increase in phone inquiries and a 133% increase in e-commerce bookings. So in a nutshell, I want you to remember that our decisions are grounded in emotions. So remember Elliot, he couldn't make a decision without his emotions being involved. As marketers, we're far more egocentric than we realize, even when we try to be customer-centric. So it's really important to use tried and tested methods of being empathetic. And this is really important because behind all of your search volumes, your click-through rates, your SERP rankings, are real people making real decisions. And this is where empathy comes in, because it allows you to break through all of those numbers and metrics and actually see and speak to the real humans behind it. Thank you very much. You can scan the QR code on the left to find me on LinkedIn, and my slides are also on there, or you can scan the QR code on the right as well. Thank you.
Need link building or content? Go to fatjoe.com. On-demand marketing services for agencies and teams. Fat Joe.